a sound or you'll wake them in the deepest part of the ancient forest. The flickering candlelight illuminates the faded pages of a story. Hedgehog still sits and tells the stories that people dare not tell before.
The last echo of the Gloaming. Chapter 1, The Moth-Girl and the Silent World. In a city whose name had been worn away by wind and sorrow, sound was a currency more precious than gold. This was Nocturna, a place of perpetual twilight, nestled in a canyon so deep the sun never touched its streets. The city was ruled by the Resonance, a guild of powerful individuals who had mastered the physics of sound. They could weave whispers into walls to keep out the cold, shape shouts into solid shields, and distill laughter into glowing, ambient light. The rich lived in districts humming with melodic warmth, their homes illuminated by captured joy. The poor shivered in the silent, dark outskirts, their voices hoarse from the constant, desperate attempt to create enough noise to trade for bread and coal. In the quietest, darkest alley, next to the great, silent void known as the Echo Well, lived a girl named Lyra. She was an orphan, a scrap of a thing with large, light-sensitive eyes, known to the few who noticed her as the Moth-Girl. Lyra was a resonant, but her gift was a cursed one. She could not create sound, she could only absorb it. Every shout, every whisper, every note of music that came near her was stolen, drawn into the small, hollow space behind her sternum, leaving behind a profound, unnerving silence. For Lyra, the world was a silent film. She saw the clanging of the blacksmith's hammer, but heard nothing. She saw arguments and laughter in the streets, but experienced only the pantomime. The only thing she could hear was the faint, residual hum of the city itself, the sound of stone settling, of air moving, a sound so low and constant it was the auditory equivalent of a shadow. Her existence was one of painful paradox. She was the quietest creature in a city obsessed with noise, and she was starving in a world of plenty. The sounds she absorbed sat inside her, a tangled, indigestible knot of other people's lives. They gave her no warmth, no light. They only made the silence around her more absolute. Her only solace was the Echo Well. It was a vast, circular pit in the city's center, a place where all sound, eventually, was said to go to die. The Resonance feared it, for it was the one thing that could absorb sound without giving anything back, a void that threatened their entire economy. But for Lyra, it was the only place she didn't feel like a monster. Its silence was natural, ancient, and welcoming. She would often lean over its moss-slicked rim, feeling a kinship with the absolute quiet below. One day, a new sound came to Nocturna. It wasn't a melody or a shout, but a slow, grinding tear. It was the sound of the world fraying at the edges. The Resonance called it the Quietude. It began at the city's borders, a creeping nullity that devoured sound. The melodic walls of the rich districts faltered and fell silent. The light-orbs, filled with captured laughter, dimmed and died. Panic, in its most silent, terrifying form, began to spread. The very fabric of their world was unraveling. The High Resonance, in the desperation, made a proclamation. Whoever could discover the source of the quietude and silence it would be granted a lifetime's worth of sonic wealth. Lyra watched the silent panic from the shadows. She felt the quietude not as a threat, but as a strange, cold tide, similar to the well's silence, but active and hungry. And for the first time, she felt a pull. The hollow space inside her chest, usually a prison, seemed to resonate with the advancing nullity. It was a calling. That night, as the city descended into a darkness deeper than any it had known, Lyra made her choice. She would not try to stop the quietude. She would follow it. She walked towards the advancing wall of silence, a small, dark figure against the dying echoes of a world. As she stepped into it, the feeble sounds of the crumbling city were snatched away, not just from the air, but from her own internal reservoir. For the first time in her life, she was truly, completely empty. And in that emptiness, she heard something new. A single, pure, guiding note, coming from the heart of the silence. It was coming from the echo well. Chapter 2. The Keeper of the Well. Descending into the echo well was not a matter of climbing, but of listening. Lyra followed the pure note, a silver thread in the tapestry of nothingness. The stone walls of the shaft were not rough, but smooth as glass, polished by eons of passing sound. There were no ladders, no steps. She simply stepped into the silence, and it supported her, a gentle, negative pressure carrying her down into the deep. She emerged into a cavern of impossible geometry. It was not dark, but illuminated by a soft, sourceless grey light. The air was thick and heavy, not with moisture, but with absorbed time. And in the center of the cavern sat the source of the pure note, a man, or what had once been a man. He was ancient, his skin like parchment stretched over a framework of bone. He was swathed in robes the color of forgotten things, and his long, slender fingers were poised over a complex, crystalline instrument that seemed to be grown from the floor itself. From this instrument, the single, sustaining note emanated. He was the keeper of the well, the final custodian of all the sound that had ever been lost. He did not look up as Lyra approached. His voice, when it came, was not a sound in the air, but a vibration that formed directly in her mind. You are the absorbent, the empty vessel. I have been waiting for you. Who are you? Lyra's own voice, a dry rustle she couldn't hear, was swallowed by the cavern. I am the last echo, he mind spoke. I was the first resonant. I who discovered how to bind sound to will. I who built Nocturna. And I who, in my pride, broke the world. His story unfolded in her mind, a cascade of images and emotions. He showed her a Nocturna vibrant with true, wild sound, a city not of captured noise, but of shared music, of unafraid voices. He showed his discovery of the sonic weave, the fundamental pattern that held sound and reality together. And he showed his fatal mistake, attempting to own the weave, to stitch it into the very stones of the city, making it permanent and predictable. I tore it, his mental voice was thick with a grief that had lasted centuries. In my arrogance, I snapped a fundamental thread. The weave began to unravel. Sound began to leak away, first slowly, then all at once, into this well. I built this place as a trap, to catch the dying echoes of the world I broke. This note I sustain is the last thread, the final anchor holding the weave from complete dissolution. The quietude you feel above is the final unraveling. Why am I here? Lyra asked, her own silent grief for a world she never knew mirroring his. You are not a mistake, he replied, his thought voice softening. You are a symptom, a manifestation of the tear itself. Your body is a small, walking version of this well. You were born of the world's need to balance itself. The resonance above, they hoard sound as I once did. They have learned nothing. Their world is a parasite on the true weave. The quietude is not a plague. It is the universe's immune response. It is a reset. Lyra understood. The Resonance City was a lie, a gilded cage built on a foundational flaw. Their fear of silence was the fear of the truth. I am dying, the keeper sent, a wave of profound weariness washing over her. I cannot hold this note forever. When I fail, the weave will snap, and all of Nocturna, and perhaps the world beyond, will be cast into absolute, primordial silence. Not the peaceful silence of this cavern, but a void from which nothing can ever emerge again. He turned his head, and for the first time, his physical eyes met hers. They were not the eyes of an old man, but deep pools of starless night. There is one chance, he whispered into her mind. The weave cannot be repaired from without. It must be rewoven from within the silence. You, the empty vessel, are the only one who can enter the tear. You must journey into the heart of the broken pattern and sing a new one into existence. But I have no voice, Lyra protested, her hands flying to her throat. I absorb sound. I cannot create it. You have absorbed a lifetime of sounds, the keeper replied. You are not empty, child. You are a library of lost echoes. You carry every unheard laugh, every swallowed sob, every silent prayer of a dying city. You must not sing with your throat. You must sing with your soul. You must become the loom. Chapter 3, The Symphony of Ruin. The keeper's instrument was called the sonolith. He guided her to place her hands upon its cool, living crystal. As she did, the world dissolved. She was no longer in the cavern. She was adrift in the sonic weave itself. It was a universe of interlocking melodies, a cosmic fugue of light and vibration. But all around her, she saw the damage. Great, golden threads of harmony were snapped and frayed, curling back into nothingness. Discordant, sickly colors bled from the tears, and through the gaps, she could see the infinite, hungry blackness of the void. The quietude was this void, seeping in. The pure note the keeper sustained was a single, brilliant silver thread, holding fast against the storm of nothingness. But it was thin, and straining. Lyra knew what she had to do. She had to gather the broken threads and reweave them. But she had no shuttle, no needle. Only the stored sounds within her. Tentatively, she reached for one. It was the memory of a sound, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer. She focused on it, not as a noise to be released, but as a substance, a fiber. To her astonishment, it manifested in the weave as a strand of glowing, hot iron. She guided it towards a broken golden thread, trying to splice them together. The result was catastrophic. The iron thread repelled the gold, and the dissonance sent a shockwave through the weave, widening a nearby tear. The void hissed, and the keeper's silver note faltered for a terrifying second. She was doing it wrong. She was trying to mend with stolen things, just like the resonance above. Just like the keeper had. She was trying to impose her will. She pulled back, trembling. The stored sounds within her churned, a cacophony of fear, anger, and desperate hope. They were useless. They were the sounds of a broken world. Despair began to creep in. Then, she remembered the one sound that was truly hers. The sound of her own silent existence. The sound of the Moth-Girl listening in the dark. It wasn't a noise. It was an absence. It was the space between the notes. She stopped trying to use the sounds. Instead, she began to listen to them, as she had in the scrap yards of her old life. She let the blacksmith's clang be just what it was, the sound of honest labor. She let a child's forgotten giggle be pure, unadulterated joy. She let a widow's sob be the honest expression of grief. She accepted them all, not as tools, but as truths. And as she did, they began to change. They softened, shedding the context of their theft. The clang became a steady, rhythmic pulse. The giggle became a spark of bright, clear light. The sob became a deep, resonant blue thread of empathy. She wasn't mending the weave. She was conversing with it. She offered a thread of rhythmic pulse, and the broken golden melody reached for it, accepting it, incorporating the rhythm into its own song. She offered the spark of light, and it filled a dark patch, not with blinding brilliance, but with a gentle, steadfast glow. She worked not as a craftswoman, but as a composer, listening to the needs of the broken symphony and offering what she had from her own library of lost moments. It was a slow, painstaking dance of empathy and resonance. She used the angry shouts to add necessary intensity, the gentle whispers to add softness, the silent prayers to create spaces of rest and anticipation. But the void was vast, and the damage was immense. For every thread she repaired, two more seemed to fray. The keeper's silver note was growing faint. She was running out of stored sounds. Her library was nearly empty. She had used almost everything. All that was left was the very first sound she had ever absorbed, the cry of her own infant self, left at the orphanage steps. A sound of pure, primal abandonment and fear. It was the core of her pain, the root of her loneliness. She had kept it buried deep, a black shard of ice in her chest. To use it would be to offer up her very self, her foundational wound. It felt like suicide. The void pressed in. The keeper's note was a dying whisper. There was no choice. Chapter 4, The First and Final Note. Lyra reached into the deepest part of her being and drew out the infant's cry. It was not a strand or a thread, but a black, jagged tear in the fabric of her own soul. She did not try to shape it or change it. She simply held it out, offering it to the broken weave with total, vulnerable acceptance. The weave recoiled at first. The pain was too raw, too sharp. But then, something miraculous happened. The golden melodies, the rhythms of labor, the sparks of joy, the threads of empathy, all the sounds she had already woven, turned towards this new, dark offering. They did not try to fix it or cover it. They surrounded it. They listened to it. The rhythmic pulse gave the cry a heartbeat. The spark of joy lent it a memory of warmth. The blue thread of empathy gave it context and understanding. The jagged black tear began to soften, to unravel. It didn't vanish, it transformed. It became a deep, minor key that underpinned the entire symphony, a bass note of profound sorrow that gave the joy meaning, the hope weight, the light a shadow to define itself against. It was the note of loss, which is the prerequisite for love. In that moment of integration, Lyra understood the true nature of the sonic weave. It was not a tapestry of perfect happiness. It was a story, and a story needs conflict and resolution, sorrow and joy, silence and sound. With the incorporation of her final, most personal sound, the re-weaving accelerated. It was no longer her work alone. The weave itself was healing, its own innate intelligence guiding the process, using the materials she had provided. The tears knitted themselves back together. The void was pushed back, not by force, but by the simple, undeniable presence of a reality that was once again whole and complete. The single, straining silver note of the keeper dissolved, its purpose fulfilled. It was no longer needed. In the cavern below Nocturna, the last echo of the Gloaming let out a final, soft sigh of release. His body crumbled to dust, his centuries-long vigil finally over. The sonolith, its purpose served, turned clear and inert. And in the heart of the newly woven pattern, Lyra, the Moth-Girl, finally found her voice. It was not a single sound, but the culmination of all sounds. She opened her mouth, and from it flowed not a song, but the potential for all songs. It was the sound of a beginning. Epilogue, a different music. The quietude receded from Nocturna. But the city it left behind was not the same. The power of the resonance was broken. Their captured melodies had bled away during the silence, and they found they could no longer hoard sound as they once had. The sonic weave was healed, but it was now wilder, freer, less susceptible to control. Light and warmth returned, but not from captured laughter. The sun, for the first time in millennia, found its way into the deep canyon, its rays a gentle, genuine gold on the wet cobblestones. People found that their own voices, raised in genuine conversation or song, could warm a room. That a shared story could light up the night. Lyra returned to the city, but she was no longer the Moth-Girl. She was the weaver-singer. She did not rule, nor did she hoard. She taught. She taught the people that silence was not an enemy, but the page upon which music is written. That grief has its own melody, and that joy is brightest when it follows sorrow. She built her home not in a silent alley, but in the now harmless echo well, which had become a place of pilgrimage. People would come and whisper their secrets, their fears, and their joys into it, not to capture them, but to release them, to add the unique thread to the great, cosmic tapestry. And if you listen very closely on the edge of sleep, in the space between the tick and the tock, you can sometimes hear it, the faint, beautiful, and endlessly complex symphony of a world that was broken, and in its mending, learn to sing a truer, more beautiful song. A song that knew the value of both the note and the rest, the sound and the silence.
If you feel a chill down your spine, don't worry. They're just standing behind you, listening with you. Thank you for daring to enter the world of fairy tales of Nim. We'll see you again next night, if you're still around.